Salem's Lot, published in 1975, is Stephen King's second novel and a modern take on the classic vampire story. The novel blends elements of horror, the supernatural, and small-town life to explore themes of evil, isolation, and the darkness that can fester beneath the surface of ordinary places. The story follows the town of Jerusalem's Lot, known as Salem's Lot, a seemingly quiet and ordinary town in Maine, as it gradually succumbs to an ancient evil in the form of vampires. Jerusalem's Lot is a small, unremarkable New England town where everyone knows everyone else, a place that seems relatively calm on the surface, but hides numerous dark secrets. The town is depicted with a vivid sense of realism, with a mix of charming and troubled residents, mundane problems, and unspoken grievances. The town's history is significant in that it has always had an air of mystery, especially surrounding the Marston House, a dilapidated mansion located on a hill just outside town. The house had a tragic past when its former owner, Hubert Marston, a notorious gangster, committed murder and suicide decades before the events of the novel. This house becomes a focal point of the supernatural horror to come. The central character, Ben Mears, is a successful novelist who returns to Salem's Lot to confront the demons of his childhood. Ben spent part of his youth in the town and had a traumatic experience at the Marston House, which he now seeks to confront. He hopes that by writing about the house, he can lay his fears to rest. Ben is also grieving the recent death of his wife, which adds to his internal struggle. When he arrives, Ben rents a room at a boarding house owned by Eva Miller and quickly becomes involved in the town's social life. He develops romantic feelings for Susan Norton, a local school teacher, and rekindles friendships with several of the town's inhabitants, including Matt Burke, a high school teacher. Shortly after Ben's return, two mysterious newcomers also arrive in Salem's Lot. These strangers are Kurt Barlow, an ancient vampire, and his human servant, Richard Straker. The two men have purchased the Marston House, which casts an ominous shadow over the town. Straker is seen around town making arrangements for a new antique store, while Barlow, initially unseen, lurks in the background. Their arrival signals the beginning of a slow, insidious infection of evil that will consume the town. The first major sign that something is wrong in Salem's Lot occurs when Danny Glick, a young boy, mysteriously dies of anemia shortly after disappearing in the woods with his brother Ralphie. Ralphie is never found, presumed kidnapped or dead, but Danny's death stuns the town. It is soon revealed that Danny has risen from the grave as a vampire, now under Barlow's control. This marks the beginning of the town's gradual transformation as more and more residents fall prey to vampirism. Danny's death and subsequent return shakes Ben and his friends, particularly Matt Burke, who begins to suspect that supernatural forces are at play. When one of Matt's students, Mike Ryerson, falls ill after spending the night near Danny's grave, Matt becomes convinced that vampires are responsible. He reaches out to Ben, who has also noticed strange occurrences in the town, and together they form an alliance with several other townspeople. As the number of vampires grows, Ben, Matt, and their allies, including Susan Norton, young Mark Petrie, a horror-obsessed boy who shows great bravery, and Father Donald Callahan, a local Catholic priest, try to uncover the source of the evil and put a stop to it. Their goal is to destroy Kurt Barlow, the master vampire, before he can fully take over the town. However, they face significant obstacles. Barlow is ancient, cunning, and ruthless, and he uses his growing army of vampire converts to isolate the group and spread terror. The battle against Barlow becomes increasingly desperate. Susan Norton, in an attempt to confront the evil alone, sneaks into the Marston House but is captured by Barlow and turned into a vampire. This is a devastating blow to Ben, who is forced to kill her to prevent her from harming others. The stakes continue to rise as more of the town falls into Barlow's thrall, and the town's population begins to shrink as people disappear or turn into vampires. One of the standout characters in the battle is Mark Petrie, a young boy who proves to be resourceful and brave beyond his years. Mark manages to resist Barlow's attempts to control him and becomes an essential member of the group fighting the vampires. His knowledge of horror fiction and vampire lore provides the group with crucial insights into how to combat the undead. Father Callahan, meanwhile, struggles with his own faith as he is drawn deeper into the battle between good and evil. He confronts Barlow, but is ultimately defeated and humiliated. In a climactic moment, Barlow forces Callahan to drink from his blood, thus tainting the priest and stripping him of his ability to fight evil. Callahan, now spiritually broken, leaves Salem's Lot in shame. Despite their best efforts, the town of Salem's Lot falls to the vampires. Barlow's influence spreads, and the remaining inhabitants either flee or succumb to vampirism. Matt Burke dies of a heart attack, further weakening the group of survivors. The town is overrun by night, and Barlow continues to hide, moving stealthily to ensure his dominance. In a final desperate attempt to stop the vampires, Ben and Mark Petrie infiltrate the Marston house. They confront Barlow, who has been hiding in the cellar of the decrepit mansion. In a tense and violent encounter, they manage to kill Barlow by driving a stake through his heart, but the victory is bittersweet. The town is already beyond saving, and most of its inhabitants are either dead or turned into vampires. After Barlow's death, Ben and Mark flee the town, knowing that while the master vampire is dead, the town itself is now a cursed place. They leave, but eventually return to Salem's Lot to burn the town down, a symbolic act of purging the evil that has consumed it. Ben has come full circle, confronting not just the literal vampires, but also the figurative ones, the trauma of his past, and the evil that lurks in ordinary small-town life. The nature of evil. King explores the idea of evil as something ancient and pervasive, manifesting not only in supernatural forms, vampires, but also in the everyday cruelties and secrets of small-town life. Barlow represents the ancient evil, while the town itself shows how ordinary people can become complicit in or victims of that evil. Isolation and community. The novel examines how isolation, both physical and emotional, can leave individuals vulnerable to evil. The community of Salem's Lot fails to come together in time to fight the growing vampire threat, and their fragmented nature allows the evil to spread unchecked. Faith and doubt. Father Callahan's arc touches on the crisis of faith, highlighting the spiritual battle between good and evil. His failure to defeat Barlow symbolizes the struggle between belief and doubt in the face of overwhelming horror. Corruption of innocence. The transformation of children into vampires, particularly Danny Glick, underscores the novel's theme of lost innocence. The idea that even children can be corrupted by evil adds to the horror of the novel. The haunted house motif. The Marston house serves as a focal point for the evil in the town, symbolizing the idea that places can carry the residue of past sins and horrors. It acts as both a literal and symbolic representation of the town's dark history.